Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all back to the Boombox Guru channel. I'm your host, LB. So before I begin this video, I'd just like to ask everybody that's tuning in if you could like the video, share the video, as well as subscribe to the channel because it does help out a lot. Alright, so for today's video, got another album review that I want to talk about. I know it's been a while since I've done an album review, but today I wanted to discuss Ace Frehley's first solo album, his Kiss solo album from 1978. I wanted to talk about this album, man, because this is one of my favorite hard rock albums, especially one of my favorite 70s hard rock albums. Uh, for this album review, man, I'm not even I don't have any notes or anything. I just decided to just do this on the whim because I feel like I've spent so much time with this album that I could just do that I didn't really have to do much preparation or anything. I just wanted to do this one on the whim, man. But yeah, like I said, man, this is one of my favorite 70s hard rock albums, or just one of my favorite hard rock albums in general. So on September the 18th, 1978, all four members of the hugely popular and famous rock band Kiss, they all released their own solo albums. And out of all four of those solo albums, Aces ended up being the most successful, and I believe it was the one that was the most critically acclaimed. Honestly, most music critics, most fans of Kiss tend to cite this one as being the best out of those four solo albums. Now, I know you probably have some people who have their own personal preferences when it comes to those albums. You know, some people might consider Gene, Peter, or Paul's to be one of their favorites or be the better ones, but that's not to hate on any of those people. To each his own. Everybody has their own taste. But I think the consensus would say that Ace had the best album out of those four, man. And I just wanted to talk about it, man, and because this is actually the only Kiss solo album from '78 that I own. I don't even have I don't even have the other three albums physically. This is the only one that I own physically because it's really the best. It's the best one. It's my favorite one, and it's really the only one that was important to me and that really resonated with me. I mean, it's just such a guitar heavy album, and I think Ace did such a wonderful job. I think this is the album that really gave the Kiss fans. It really fed those fans and gave them what they needed. And I would even go on to say that this album, I think it went above and beyond what the Kiss fans were expecting. I think Ace just really just took it to another level, and it really, maybe he didn't see it at that time, but it really helped to set the stage for his later successful solo career when he left the band. But it's a phenomenal record, and I think it's such a good album that just about everything that Ace has put out since then has often been compared to this '78 album. And as a fan of Ace Frehley, I personally don't think that any of his other albums, even though his other solo albums are good, I don't think any of them have ever come close to the magic that he had on this record. You know what I'm saying? Like there's been some that are kind of almost came close. Maybe like the Trouble Walking album, you could say, but I just don't think that any of his solo albums have really came to really recapturing what he did on this record. I honestly don't think, and that's not to say that his other solo albums aren't good. He did put out some other good solo records, but none of them have really gotten to the point of what he did on this record. But yeah, that's just how great of an album it is, man. And anybody that's a fan of hard rock, especially classic '70s hard rock, man, they definitely need to own this album because it's just a wonderful, it's just a masterpiece of hard rock music in general. So I actually remember reading somewhere, and I don't know if this is true. Like longtime Kiss fans, maybe y'all could clarify this for me in the comments. But I remember reading somewhere one time where it was said that the whole thing behind the Kiss solo albums coming out was like a last ditch effort to keep the band together. Because I think at that point things had really started falling apart. Basically, the band was divided into two camps. Gene and Paul, and it was Ader and it was Peter and Ace over here. So I think maybe the management or whatever, or maybe the band members came up with the idea of maybe putting out these solo albums as a way to try to keep everything together. one thing I do know for sure is that Ace, he was very much underestimated when it came time to put out these solo albums because he was he was a wild one. He was on one at this time. I guess it's safe to say that Ace was like the wild card in the band. He was truly living that rock and roll lifestyle, man. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He was deep into it at that point. And Gene and Paul especially, they really kind of they didn't kind of they did they underestimated him. I think they had a meeting when discussing these albums, and they made like this underhanded gesture towards him, telling him that, hey, if he needed any help with his solo album, to just call them. So that was basically just an underhanded gesture at them, because they really didn't believe that Ace was going to do anything. They felt that he was just, I don't know. It seems to be that that's always been his relationship with Gene and Paul, where they've always kind of, well, not kind of, I keep saying that, but they've always sort of try to like underestimate him and try to, I guess, in a way to try to keep him down or something like that. But Ace ended up proving them wrong with this record. Like I said, this one ended up being the best selling and most successful out of the four albums. I did say best selling. I've heard that Gene Simmons said that his album sold more. I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't look it up, but whatever the case, Ace Frehley's ended up being the most critically acclaimed, and his ended up being considered the best out of the four. And he had a huge hit with New York Groove, which I think overshadowed all the other singles that came off the other members' solo albums. So, I mean, whatever the case is, man, Ace, he didn't let Gene and Paul, he didn't let Gene and Paul underestimating him keep him down. He took it and used it as fuel, which I think is very inspiring. He let that motivate him, and he ended up putting out the best record, and he proved them wrong. And I think that even nowadays, I don't know about recently, but I think I've heard rumors that anytime Gene and Paul hear that Ace is going to put out an album, they get a little bit nervous because they don't know what it's going to do, because some of his albums have tended to be a lot better than what Kiss has put out, even years after he left the band. So this record was the beginning, I think, of Ace really. I mean, although it would take a few years later, man, I really think it was the beginning of Ace, of solidifying his successful solo career. I think this record, it really kind of showed what a star he really was on his own as well. That, maybe he didn't really necessarily need Gene and Paul. You know what I'm saying? That he was a star in his own right, and he really proved everybody. He really proved them all wrong. And I know that must have felt good to him after they just underestimated him so much, for him to end up doing such a great job and putting out not only the best Kiss solo album, but one of the best hard rock albums of the late 1970s. All right, man. So let's get into some of these songs, man. This album has 9 tracks on here. So we're gonna start off with the first song, "Rip It Out." "Rip It Out," man. What a great album opener. This has always been one of my favorites, man. Like, let me tell you something. A lot of these rock and roll stars back in the day, they really knew how to properly open up an album. So "Rip It Out," what a strong opener. Heavy, a heavy riff. I mean, that the rhythm. I mean, Anton Fig, who's the drummer on this album, man. I mean, he really played the heck out of the drums, and like the rhythm that he had on this particular song, man. I mean, it really kicked a lot of butt, man. And like those heavy riffs, I mean, they packed such a major punch. And then, Ace, his vocal performance on here, I really enjoy his vocal performance on here. Ace he's never been known to be the greatest singer, but he does a good job within the context of what he does as far as hard rock music. And he really nailed it vocally on here. I mean, the whole entire album, the whole entire song, he just nailed it with the heavy riffs and the guitar solos, everything, man. So "Rip It Out," very strong opening to this album. All right, so the next song is "Speeding Back to My Baby." This is another good one on here. This song actually kind of had to grow on me a little bit throughout the years, man, but I actually like it. It actually has become one of my favorites on the album. I really like the old school rock and roll feel of it. And it's got some amazing riffs. Of course, again, Ace, he's nailing it vocally on here with his what they call his Ace Frehley singing, not singing kind of style. He really does a great job on here. My favorite part on here is the chorus. I think the chorus is really catchy, and I really like the background vocals. The female background singers or singer that he had on here, man, they did a really great job. They really added. They were a real nice addition to this song, and I really thought they added a bit of catchiness to this track, which is why I like it so much, man. But yeah, Speeding Back to My Baby, that's another one of my favorites on this particular album. So track number 3, Snowblind, another great one, another heavy hard rocker on this one, man. I really like the rhythm on this particular track. I like the riffs on here. The riffs are kind of dark. Yeah, it's kind of got like some really heavy dark riffs on here. Again, I like Ace's vocals on here again. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I like Ace's vocals throughout this whole entire album. You know what I'm saying? For him not to be the greatest singer though, he did such a great job on here. But yeah, Snowblind I really like. It's him going back to that more heavier hard rock sound on this particular song. And I've always wondered if this song was about drugs, because every time I think about the title Snowblind, it's the same title as the Black Sabbath song Snowblind, which was about cocaine and so forth, man. I've always wondered what this song was about, if it was about the same as that thing. But whatever the case, man, I really dig it. This one is a lot of people's favorites on the album. A lot of people cite Snowblind as being their favorite on this record, man. But it's definitely a really good track, man. It's another great heavy hard rock number on here. All right, so track number 4, Ozone. Now this song right here, Ozone, this is my favorite song on this album, and I will go ahead and say that it's probably one of my favorite Ace Frehley songs, period. But I really like this song ever since the first time I heard it. I mean, this one's got a slow tempo, kind of groovy, and I really like the guitar on here. I really like the riffs, man. The riffs are kind of bluesy a little bit. I really like it. Almost close to sounding like slide guitar a little bit. Not quite slide guitar, but it's close, man. It's just that the bluesy riffs and everything. And man, Ace, man, he really be churning out some great solos throughout this whole entire track, man. And I really like his. To me, this one has my favorite Ace Frehley vocal performance on here, man. He really nailed this song. Now, this song I do know is about drugs, and it's not one of those anti say no to drugs type songs or anything like that. It's really Ace. He's being honest that he enjoys being high. He's basically singing about how much fun he likes being high. That's what he talks about on this particular song. And Ace, like I said, man, Ace, he was living that rock star lifestyle at this time. He was definitely taking well advantage of it, man. And this song, I guess you could say this is a song that really documents that particular time in his life. But this is one of my personal favorites on this album, and I think it's a big highlight, and I think it's one of Ace's best songs in his career, honestly. Okay, track number 5 is What's on Your Mind. I really like this song too. Now, this is probably one of the softer songs on the album. Now, when I say soft, I don't mean like it's cringy soft or anything like that, or it's just it's got some slight heavy parts to it, but it utilizes a lot of like acoustic guitars throughout it too, man. And vocally, Ace, he's a little bit more. He's not as I guess he's not necessarily aggressive on the album at all, but he kind of takes a bit of a mellower approach on this particular song, man. But I really dig it. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's one of the more softer songs on the record, but it's still a great song. I just really like those acoustic guitars throughout the track, and also like the way Ace sung the hook. I really like the melody that he used on his vocals during the hook, man, which is why I really like this song so much. Okay, so track number 6 is New York Groove. And New York Groove, this was the single from the album, and this single was a huge hit. This was a huge hit, man. And you know what? It was interesting though, is I didn't even realize that this was an Ace Frehley song. Well, technically it's not an Ace Frehley song. New York Groove is actually a cover song. But what I'm saying is, Ace Frehley's version, I've pretty much been hearing most of my life. I think I've heard it in movies. I think I've heard it in commercials, maybe video games. I think I've even heard it on classic rock radio a few times. I didn't even realize it was Ace Frehley until years later. But yeah, New York Groove is actually a cover song written by a gentleman named Russ Ballard. I think it was written for a band called the Hello or something like that. I've never heard of that band. I've never even heard their version of the song. Uh, but whatever the case is, man, New York Groove was a huge hit. It was a huge hit for Ace, and it really helped to propel the sales of this album. And which, in case, I think his single ended up being like way more successful than the other singles that were released on the other member solo albums. So it's actually right up there with some of the signature. I think this song is actually right up there with a lot of the signature Kiss songs. To be honest with you, that's just how big of a single it was. And this wouldn't be the last. This wouldn't be the last Russ Ballard song that Ace would cover. Like he with this song, with the success of this song, he would go on to cover a few other Russ Ballard songs, like Into the Night on the Frehley on the first Frehley's comic album, and then there was a song he did on Trouble Walking. I can't remember. I think it was a song called Do Ya. I think that was a Russ Ballard song that he covered as well. So yeah, he would go on to cover more Russ Ballard songs, but as far as I know, New York Groove was like that was the most successful one that he did. And like I said, man, it helped to propel this album to more sales, which it ended up being the most successful out of the four Kiss albums, man. Okay, so track number 7 is "I'm in Need of Love." Uh, this song is solid, but it's not typically one of my favorites on here. It's not a bad song by any means. It's solid, but you know, I would say this was probably the weaker song on the album. I would call this the weak one on the album compared to the other ones, but it's not a bad song at all. But you know, it kind of feels like a I don't want to. It's not like a throwaway track, but maybe like a filler track, in my opinion. That's the way this song really comes off. Excuse me. That's the way this song really comes off as. Comes off like sort of like a filler track, in my opinion. But you know, it's not. You know, sonically, it's not bad. You know, it's pretty cool, but it's not particularly one of my favorites either. But you know, I can tolerate it. You know, whenever I'm listening to this album, it's not a song that I gotta jump up and I gotta skip it, or if I'm listening to this in my car, I gotta switch to another song. I can tolerate it, but I don't really think it's one of the better songs on this album. But you know, it's solid nonetheless. And but even with me thinking that it's not necessarily one of the best songs on this album, I still think that it's solid, and I still think that it's still pretty good. I don't know if I'm contradicting myself too much right there, but what I'm saying is I may not like it as much as the other ones on here, but I don't think it's a bad song, which means that it really goes to show how strong of a songwriter that Ace Frehley really is. That even his weaker songs can still be pretty good and enjoyable. But yeah, that's about all I can really say about that song. You know, it's solid, but you know, it's not really one of the standouts on here, in my opinion. Okay, so track number 8 is called "Wiped Out," and I've always liked this song, man. I thought it was really cool because you know, "wiped out" that's a surfer term, that's surfer slang or whatever, surfer jargon, and that's kind of how the song is. That's kind of how the rhythm song. If you ever watch some of those beach movies where it gets to that, I guess the climatic part of the surfers and everything like that, you know, those rhythms and beach songs or surfer music. That's kind of the kind of rhythm that this song kind of pretty much has, but it also got some really heavy riffs on it, and there's like some cool effects that are thrown on there too to kind of give it a slightly experimental edge, man. But it's a really cool song. I thought it was real interesting. I thought it was really a really cool take on him bringing back like that old school kind of like surfer music vibe to a hard rock album. But it's a really dope song, man. I thought it was a very interesting song, and I thought it kind of switches things up a little bit, and he kind of did something different than the typical like 70s hard rock style on this particular record, man. I just thought that was a nice touch of how they kind of just added that into that, kind of harken back to that old school surfer type music, but gave it a hard rock twist. I just thought that was real dope, man. So it's a real cool song as well on here. All right, and then we get to track number 9, which is the last song of the album, called "Fractured Mirror." And this is an instrumental song, but it's a very great instrumental. And this would start a staple on a lot of Ace Frehley albums. He would make a few more sequels to Fractured Mirror, as well as it would be a staple on his albums to always end them with a really good instrumental. Uh, song is really beautiful. Song is really beautiful. Uh, I really like the effects that they threw on there to really enhance the beauty of the music. A lot of great melodies, some awesome riffs on here, and some amazing solo performances from Ace. It's just a wonderful, it's just a wonderful instrumental. I know a lot of people out there who actually have a playlist of all the Fractured Mirror songs as well as the other instrumental songs that he's done on his albums. But yeah, Fractured Mirror, man, what an awesome instrumental. And like I said, this was the beginning of him like adding instrumentals to the end of his albums to close them out. And like I said, he would also create more sequels to Fractured Mirror, like on his next solo album, the Frehley's comedy album, Trouble Walking, and some of the other ones, later albums down the line. But a really good instrumental, man. Like it's just one of those songs where you just kind of just gotta kick back and you just gotta just vibe out to it. Definitely on a nice sunny day, if you're listening to this album, you let the windows down and you just put that song on repeat and just ride. Maybe if you're going, maybe you're traveling somewhere long on the road somewhere, you can just put this song on, just kind of vibe out and relax. It kind of has that vibe to it, but yeah, it's a very great instrumental. I think probably one of the best instrumentals in hard rock music that I've ever heard, man. But yeah, real great song and a perfect ending to a great record. All right, so that's it for my album review, discussing Ace Frehley's first solo album, his Kiss solo album from 1978. Definitely one of the greatest hard rock albums to ever be released. If you're someone that's never heard this album, listen, you really need to go check it out. I believe it's on Spotify. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this album is on Spotify. Wherever you consume your music, man, definitely go check out this album. This is one of the greatest hard rock albums to come out of the 70s. It's one of the greatest hard rock albums, period. I'm pretty sure so many people picked up the guitar by hearing this record. It really helped to solidify Ace Frehley as a star on his own right. And even though his solo career wouldn't really take off until a few years later, I think that this album right here was definitely the beginning of that. I think this was the first indication that Ace Frehley was a star in his own right, that he was a star outside of the band Kiss, and that he was very talented. Cause like I said, man, Ace was very underestimated prior to this album. People kind of just looked at him as like a loose cannon, but no, he was. I mean, he may have been a bit of a loose cannon, but hey, he was a loose cannon that really has a lot of talent. You know what I'm saying? He's one of the greatest guitar players of all time. He's a great songwriter, which is proven on this record. And I I was just glad to see. It was just good to see somebody who was looked at as an underdog put out something and win, and that's what he did with this. In spite of the underestimation he received from Gene and Paul, he took that as fuel and he created one of the best hard rock albums ever. And he proved everybody wrong. He proved all his detractors wrong. And I think he really gave the fans what they wanted. And he went above and beyond that even more by just taking it to the next level musically, man. So, yeah, Kiss solo album, Ace Frehley, 1978. Definitely one of the best albums out there that's ever been released. And it's one of the reasons why Ace is one of my favorites in Kiss. I think he is my favorite Kiss member, to tell you the truth. He's a lot of people's favorite Kiss member. And, this album is proof of why. Because he really did his thing on this record. And, as far as the other Kiss solo albums, maybe in the near future I may get around to getting those just for collection purposes. I mean, I have heard those albums. I mean, they've got their good moments, but not like this one. Not like this one. I mean, this album pretty much from start to finish, all the way through, is just really good. It's just great. Like, I can't, even the song I'm in Need of Love, even though I may not think it's one of the best songs on this album compared to the other ones, it's still a really solid track. So from start to finish, a real good album. Those other solo albums just didn't really live up to what most people, I guess, were expecting, in my opinion. But this one really did. It exceeded. It went beyond expectations, man. And Ace turned out a classic, man. But yeah, But I'm rambling. I'm rambling. I know I'm rambling. Like I said, I just did this whole review on the whim. I just felt the need to just want to talk about this album because I've been listening to a lot of hard rock, classic hard rock lately, particularly Ace and stuff like that. So I just felt the need to just want to get this out there and talk about the album because I've never even talked about this album on my channel, and I wanted to make a video. So I hope you all enjoyed this video of my album review of Ace Frehley's Kiss solo album from 1978, one of the greatest hard rock albums to ever be released. So if you did enjoy this video, if you could all do me a huge favor, if you can just hit that thumbs up and give me a like, you could share this video as well as hit that subscribe button and tap that bell. That way you'll be notified when I drop new content. And I want to thank everybody that's been tuning in to the channel, that's been watching the videos, that's been showing their support. I truly appreciate it. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day, a blessed week, and love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.